Ezehu Chacham, Halomed Mikol Adam. Who is wise? The one who learns from everyone. It's an interlude at Limmud. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's Rav Mike, and you may have been expecting the usual sort of flow into the time stream of history, but fortunately for you and for me, that's not what's going to happen today, because I'm sitting here in Birmingham in the United Kingdom, and I'm not alone. I'm here at the Limmud conference, which you don't know what it is. We'll explain in a moment, and I'm here with Eve Harrow. Eve, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Mike. It's great to be with you.
It is wonderful. You know, we actually have known each other as faces, as names, as colleagues, but we met for the first time, 3 days ago?
At the airport in London.
I identified you from a distance. I said, that's Eve Harrow. She's so cool. And I wanted to get to know you. And then, of course, Yisha had pushed me that we have to do a show together. And here we are.
It was so funny when we started talking because I knew you because I know your voice because I listened to your shows.
It's a funny thing, huh?
Right? So it's like, oh, now I can put the face to the voice. It was great.
Did they work?
Did it work? Yeah.
The face, the voice thing. I often wonder. Totally. I don't know. I don't like my own voice on radio, but that's its own story. I won't get into it.
Okay.
But so where are we right now? For those of you who don't know what Limmud is it's a phenomenon. It's a cultural explosion in the Jewish world. It's about, 30 years old?
I think so, something like that. But it's sourced out here.
It was started here in the United Kingdom. And what it is a 5-day conference where there are going to be more than 2,500 Jews of every shape, size, age, color, denomination, orientation, everything that you could possibly imagine, all here in this quite luxurious Hilton hotel for the purpose of learning and teaching.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible thing. And I want to take a minute to talk with you, Eve, a little bit about just what's happening in your experience, in my experience, and also want to try to place it in a bit of a historical context. I can't avoid it. I feel a little bit of obligation to my regular listeners. We got to have a drop of history in there.
It's fine. I love historical context.
But maybe you could just start off by telling me, how do you think this happened? I mean, 30 years ago, such a thing didn't exist. Where does it come from?
I think people are trying to get in touch with their roots and trying to get in touch with their sources. Look, in general, and this conversation that many of us have had over the years, there's almost a different kind of Judaism to some degree that's being born now, or there's a search for what is Judaism. I think a lot of it has to do with the post-67 world, something that I've said. I think the Six-Day War wasn't just a war, it was a shifting in the balance of the entire world. It was such a major miracle that something changed around the world. If you want to say the Shekhinah, like the presence of God came down, granola, Woodstock, all of that.
Did you just put the Shekhinah and granola and Woodstock in the same sentence?
I absolutely did. Girls can do that. Women can do that. We can put food and God together because for us, eating is a very religious experience. Totally sacred act. No, but something happened afterwards. The music, everything. There seems to have been an awakening. And I think that awakening also affected Judaism, which for a long time was traditions and a more sheltered kind of a life. We had to be because we were out alone in this sea of very hostile people usually. And then now we have a home, so every Jew around the world can walk a little more securely, can hold his head up a little higher.
Thank God.
Thank God. Really, but really thank God.
No,
not
really,
just as an expression. Really thank God. And I think it's allowed us some freedom to check out Judaism in ways that were not as, I wouldn't say weren't being checked out because they were always, say, Kabbalists and they were always mystical Jews, but it's worked its way into the mainstream to a greater degree. And I think Limmud is a reflection of that.
So that's fascinating. Although 67 at this point is a good 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to quibble over 20 years.
Exactly.
But my sense is also that part of the shift that's happened here is around learning.
Yes.
You know, I remember Rabbi Bravender, he should be healthy and well. If people don't know him, he is really one of the grandfathers of the English-speaking Torah learning world in the land of Israel. He was here in Israel at the 67 war.
Wow.
And he told me that in the wake of the war, Americans started to show up in Israel totally lost. Didn't know why they were there or what they were doing, but they knew they wanted to learn.
They were drawn.
Yeah, literally drawn. And he told me again and again stories and stories of people that would sit. He said it was like they were trying to learn Chinese. They would sit chain smoking with multiple dictionaries, trying to read one line in the Mishnah for hours at night. And he, having coming out of a religious background, was fascinated by what were they looking for. So absolutely, I think that part of what we're experiencing here is reflective of a turning point that the world as a whole, certainly the Jewish people, went through in 67. But nevertheless, one of the pieces that really makes me curious is how I started. Every shape, size, denomination. We're quite a divided people.
Diverse.
Well, but diverse and divided.
Yeah.
And I was actually just speaking with a young man at the table at breakfast here about the glaring absence of one subsection of the Jewish people here. And I'm speaking about not just the ultra-Orthodox.
Well, we have Lawrence Schiffman who's here, yeah.
He's amazing.
He's amazing.
Maybe we can give him 2 minutes later.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and track him down to interview him. I hope I
great
can.
idea. I want to hear that.
Yeah, we'll see.
If people don't know, he's one of the world's renowned scholars on the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Amazing, class of his own,
and the traditional Jew.
Yes,
in very real ways. But I want to hone in on this question of what has happened in the last 30 years that suddenly there's been a democratization of knowledge and learning. You know, that you have people here who are not only learning but teaching. People are getting up who will tell you, no, I'm not a rabbi, no, I'm not a scholar, I'm not an expert, but I have something to say. And there's an excitement around that because I've been looking in all the sessions. Now, granted, I'm in bed by 10, so I don't know what the late night self, but they've been full.
Yeah.
I mean, someone puts their name up on the door and says, I want to talk about, I don't know, did Rabbi Akiva brush his teeth with the toothpaste or whatever, and there's 30, 40 people in there eager to hear and eager to share, and there's almost a contractual agreement that I'm here to speak and you're here to speak and I'm going to listen to you and you're going to listen to me, and there's some energy that feeds on itself. And I'm curious, and why am I curious? Because as far as I can tell, this idea of thousands, and if you can't picture it, the listeners just have to close your eyes and picture, I don't know, the soccer stadium is a little bit bigger than that, but a high school football stadium full of Jews learning and teaching. That kind of buzz.
Yeah.
That as far as I can tell, for 1,500 years, such a phenomenon has not happened in Am Yisrael. What used to be called the Yarkei Kala, right? These moons of gathering that in Elul in the late summer, early fall, when the crops were drying in the field, or in Nisan in the early spring when there was no agricultural business to really be done, that the Jews in Babylon would gather to the academies in masses in order to learn and prepare themselves. Now here we live in a different type of society. None of us are letting our crops dry in the field. But nevertheless, after a break of 1,500 years, there's a desire to do this en masse. And it's just this burning curiosity. Where does it come from? What do you think of this idea that it's a desire for this democratization of knowledge? That people are tired of the hierarchical ownership over Torah.
So I would say there's a positive and negative aspect here to what you're saying. One of them is perhaps a lessening of respect for people who really have scholarship. All right. And some of that, I think, is brought upon by the fact that a lot of people call themselves rabbi these days would not have been called rabbis in the olden days. Getting smicha. Okay. All right. But some of you still would have deserved it. But I'm saying the idea, that rabbi means someone who's full of knowledge and brilliant and can impart it, without being personally insulting to you, of course, who would have earned it anyhow. But that real smicha, the real ordaining, was gone a long time ago.
Yes.
So on some level, the higher levels have come down, in addition to the lower levels coming up. And you can't take out certain historical issues that have happened as well. Literacy. Okay, so in the olden days, you might have had people gather to learn because they themselves couldn't have learned on their own.
They had to listen.
They had to listen because they themselves weren't literate. And now you have, I would say definitely in the Jewish world, very
almost
high.
Universal literacy.
Now, it turns out that we were more literate than everybody else even back in the day.
Oh, for sure.
And that's one of the things the archaeology is finding. But leaving that aside, so there is a coming together that the top echelon is lower and the bottom echelon is coming up. You also can't take out some of, I think, the technological advances that we've had. You've got the internet. So if you're like a little bit curious now about what a Rav said 1,500 years ago or anything, who Rabbi Akiva was, who Shimon ben Shetach was, you simply have to get to your phone and take 3 minutes to click it in. And you'll have your
Google.
answer. Ask Rabbi Google. So there's the technological aspect as well that has made information so much more accessible than it used to be, not to mention travel. I mean, here we are. I came from Israel. You came from Israel. We're sitting in Birmingham. I sat at breakfast near somebody from Boston, and there's people from all over the world here. So travel has also made it easier for people to gather, to know that this is even happening.
So, but here's a question for you. I hear it. A lot of these are socioeconomic phenomena almost.
And people have more free time and more disposable income to be able to do this too. This isn't a cheap week.
No, although God bless the Pardes Institute for sending me. But here's my question. People are also, sociologists in particular, are speaking about the how do you say that in English? The isolation.
Isolation, yes.
The isolation of our culture. Everybody staring at their phones, moving deeper into their own world. On social media, their own values and worldviews being reflected back to them. So what do you make of the fact that it is a principle at Limmud that people of different types come together? And how does that relate? Now I hear a connection. Someone told me, I saw one of my teachers here, Rav David Bigman, who in my opinion is not only a super mensch, but a tremendous, tremendous scholar and an important thinker. And his name is up there with mine. He says David Bigman. So I said to someone, how could you call him David Bigman?
Right.
And they said it's a value here at Limmud that we don't call anyone by titles.
Don't use titles. Right. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because some people have worked really, really hard to earn those titles, and they should be given that. Yeah, some people just hang on the title, and other people, but it also tells everyone around them that this person has reached a certain level of scholarship. Yeah, maybe or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, and I also have some wariness of his words being weighed equally against some random other person's in the conversation. But I guess what my question really was, I skipped track there, was how come people are coming together to do this? Meaning we could all access each other's information. We can all record our stuffs and be alone conveniently in our house. It would be cheaper. It would be more convenient.
But it would be alone.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are lonely. A lot of people are looking for family. Let's say the Pew poll, for example, that just came out of last year. The Jews are marrying later and having fewer children. And I think I
didn't get that message.
No, I didn't either. But I think what family used to fill for people and keep you from being lonely, though you can be lonely within a family structure as well, but you're not alone, right? Has a lot of people are either they don't have the kids or the kids grow. They just had a couple and the kids are gone. And people have also moved away from a family core. So you can be, even let's say if you live in the United States, you can be thousands of miles away from the people that you gave birth to.
Sure.
So to some degree, I think this is also some kind of replacement to meet like-minded people, to forge new friendships and new relationships.
I hear that. I've been talking to a lot of people who are self-defined Limmud groupies or junkies.
Yeah.
Right? This is their world.
This is their world.
And when they're not here, they're thinking about it. Or people should know, our listeners, that it's all volunteer run.
Amazing.
It is incredible, logistical.
Huge.
I
am so impressed.
Such a thing happen. Yeah.
I'm so impressed. Do I think there's something else here also, and that's a little bit of tribalism. I still think that people at their core are tribal.
Oh, absolutely.
I do. I mean, we see it in the Middle East. It's like in
our
face.
Ashamed of it here.
Oh my goodness.
We're there. Sorry, we're not
but when
there.
you leave the Middle East and you got into the West, you don't find tribalism anymore.
Oh, it's
I like to say that in the West, your tribe is your team, and that's why people are such sports fanatics. That's what they hang on to, is their team, their alma mater,
I'm from
whatever
Cleveland.
it is.
I can definitely relate to that.
Okay, so I'm married to a total sports nut, and so I think to some degree Limmud fits that in also.
Yes.
Your tribe is Limmud, the people, and then it's defined. Okay, if you're a Limmud person, everybody knows. You're curious about Jewish texts. You're curious about Jewish learning. You have something to impart, and it gives you some kind of that framework too. So there's a lot of different aspects to this.
That is a critical piece. I want to push on that for a second, because I absolutely agree with you that this myth of this sort of post identity world is destructive. That force of tribalism that the West sneers at, really sneers at, is a deep misunderstanding of a basic human need to feel part of a collective.
Right. And extended family. Yeah. Call it whatever you will. If you don't like the word tribe, if it conjures up images.
We need to reclaim that. I think we need to really claim that. And in fact, I think it also goes a long way to answering the question I want to step to next, which is what's the power of creating a space in which people don't have to agree or share values other than the desire to engage each other, right? Meaning, there's a principle here of disagreement, of creating a marketplace of ideas. I mean, what's your experience been? Let's just put our cards on the table.
Right.
That I'm willing to bet that when you and I walk into a room in this place, we tilt the political scale significantly to the right.
I would imagine so, yeah.
So what was your experience last night?
Okay, so last night I presented for the first time, and I did not get as much pushback as I thought I would. The presentation was 50 years after the Six-Day War, is it occupation or liberation? And I put a lot of information, maybe even too much, into that 1 hour, because I find that people really just don't know.
Yeah, a lot of ignorance out there.
A lot of ignorance, which is maybe why, but they're coming to Limmud maybe understanding that they want to learn and that they have ignorance, which is already a big part of it.
That's a big step.
A lot of people ignorant don't think they're ignorant, and that's already a
that's the biggest challenge, right?
Biggest challenge. But you have people coming here who say, I know I don't know, I want to learn. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to present a side that is really not getting a whole lot of play here. You have much more of the other side. Breaking the Silence has like 6 different platforms.
Yeah.
Some of the people here, and I have to say it, and I'm not necessarily proud of saying this, I might have trouble sitting and having breakfast with, because some of the people here I really think are doing things that undermine the lives and safety of our children. And that already, for me, Mama Bear, big
red
problem.
Line.
Big red line, okay? This is not just having an opinion that's different than mine. This is actually taking actions that makes Israel a less safe.
Yes.
Okay. So we have that here. So I came here on my own in order to try and put some little balance in here and give a space for people who want to hear this side of it, just out of curiosity, not because they agree, just because maybe there is another side to come in here. So I had about 50, 60 people last night.
Great.
And I was surprised because there were a whole lot of other things going on, like Lawrence Schiffman, that I wanted to go hear. I was hoping nobody would show up to my lecture so I could go hear him. But anyway, so it was interesting. Tonight I'm doing something similar. Can there be peace without coexistence? Along the same lines. And then as a panel tomorrow night, I'll be with Arya King. It's a very broad panel of a lot of different opinions. Is East Jerusalem a settlement? So, but then in there, tomorrow morning I have something fun, which is Tu B'Av. It's about the wine. It's about Yudav Shomron and the wines. And I brought a bottle of wine of Jajuli.
Oh, great.
So anybody who comes is going to have like a little bit of wine.
Taste of Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, a little taste of Eretz Yisrael, but a wine that we haven't grown since the temple times. So I'm trying for them to also understand the richness of Judea and Samaria outside of the political realm, from the time of the tribes, from the time of the temple. This is the heart of our homeland.
And you found people receptive?
I think so. People are being very polite. Last night I did not get a lot of people were just curious and they asked for reading material and they said, wow, like we haven't heard this before. So that's important for me. Look, ultimately we're educators. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so the worst thing for me though is if people don't ask questions.
Right.
That's like, we're sleeping? That's
right.
terrible.
Thank you, but no thank you, or yeah.
Yeah. Like if I didn't spark your curiosity, I just wasted my time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's got to go further. It's got to go way beyond the talk.
I can tell this is one of the challenges I see as an educator at Pardes, which is similar in its political culture to Limmud. And also here, I've actually had someone say it to me over breakfast this morning, is that it's true it's a marketplace of ideas. It's true that there's a value placed on disagreement, but there are certain things which can't be spoken about.
Like?
Well, he didn't actually name them, and so I wouldn't want to project on what he said. But
what would you say, given your experience?
I would say the particularism of the Jewish people. I really believe that what divides Jews more than anything else is not left-right politics. It's not America, Israel. It's not religious, secular. It's, do you believe the Jews are just like everyone else or not?
Particularism.
And I really believe that is one of the most uncomfortable aspects of what it is to be a Jew in the world. I hold it in a very uncomfortable sense, even though, I mean, to me it's very clear, both in my studies of history, in my personal experience, and in the way I understand existential reality, that the Jews are not like everyone else.
Right.
And I don't know that I could get away with just saying that out in the crowd here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So there are limits. There are limits to the discourse.
Well, because, people will take that to feel that, Jews think they're better than everybody else.
Right.
We're different does not mean better.
Well, the irony is the difference is a value out here.
Yes.
The difference is a value, except not when it's us. This is one of the challenges of the Jews. Is that everybody else can be proud of their tribe. Everyone else should be proud of their tribe, and I'll take off my shoes when I come into your house, and I'll cover my head when you want me to. But our tribe insisting that we be us is an uncomfortable feeling for Jews.
You don't think it's because of really so long in the diaspora where we were desperate, on the one hand, to keep, if you weren't different, you didn't keep the traditions alive. That's for sure.
You disappeared, sure.
But so many of our people have just assimilated into the societies that we're in because we're just so desperate to be loved and not to be different. We're tired of being out there, of being looked at. Look, that's my background. My father and his family, German Jews, who feel, if you've read Amos Alon's book, The Pity of It All, about German Jewry in particular, that we brought on anti-Semitism by being different. And therefore, if there aren't Jews, there's no anti-Semitism. If there's no Jews, there's no anti-Semitism, and we should just kind of meld into the world.
Which apparently is not true, since there are countries all over the world that hate the Jews, even though they've never met them.
Exactly.
No, yes, I think that is a part of it, is that desire. There's another face to the Jew, which the Jews are just like everyone else, only more so.
Only, right.
Right?
Right.
But I think also part of it is the mission. Is that
we've got a job to do.
Yeah, exactly. That our particularism is in that mission, and that means if I own that identity, then I can't just simply live my life as an individual, be it as a good individual with values and ideals. No, I have to actually buy in to a mission which is happening whether I want it to or not.
But what if some Jews think that they've completed the mission and therefore they don't have to be Jews anymore? Let's say the biblical values, what we now call Judeo-Christian or even Western values, right? The morality of the Western world today is biblical morality.
For sure.
All right? So maybe we're the victims here of our own success. If the Western Jews are looking around and saying, okay, we did it. Mm-hmm. The civilized world, if you will, is, whether they know it or not, living Torah to some degree. Not so much because of the Jews, more because of the Christians spread it around the world, right?
Although, don't undervalue the impact of the Jews. Right now in my history, I'm just at the edge of the Enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're absolutely correct that the whole Jewish Enlightenment, well, not the whole, but a good portion of it, we'll get into the details for my regular listeners, don't be nervous, but a good portion of it was founded on the fact that they felt that redemption found its expression through emancipation.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they abandoned the sort of what we today call Zionism, but for them was just simply religious messianism. God will take us home. That's what redemption is. We'll be back in our land of free people. Well, suddenly you could be a free person in Berlin. You could be a free person in Warsaw. That is redemption. And so, yes, I think there's a portion of the momentum of our mission that succeeded in bringing these ideals of emancipation and the value of human life and respect for other.
Right.
At the same time.
Not to mention do not kill, do not murder, and all the other
right.
nasties.
At the same time.
Right.
Look at the globe. I mean, let's not shy away from the dirtier side of that. As that was all going on in Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries, colonialism was sucking the life out of the other half of the planet and making it possible for Europe and North America to create such a society. So now, today, in the Middle East, I see that whole post-colonial structure crumbling around us. And we're like a little island of sanity with all our insanity as Jews and the complexities of this border and that. We're the island of sanity in the Middle East as all those things collapse around us. And so therefore, it's clear to me the mission's not done. Oh,
the mission isn't done. I'm trying to explain why maybe some Jews feel that they don't have to be particularly Jewish anymore.
Right.
Let's say, keep the mitzvah, keep Shabbat, keep kosher, those things like that. Because the bigger picture is what Judaism is on a moral level has been done. Maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
I used to think, that was okay. That 4/5 of the Jews, as our sages teach us, didn't come out of Egypt. Mm-hmm. That 1 out of every 5 decided we're going for it into the hard, cold desert or hard, hot desert, as it may be, right? And the rest stayed behind to be Egyptians.
To walk sideways, whatever it is.
Or whatever, exactly. Walk like an Egyptian. But I believe that Limmud has proven me wrong. Why is it that these Jews here, who are really British and really American and really Canadian or wherever they are, they're coming out of the woodwork? They smell the Torah. There's something that is drawing them together. They're not satisfied. As you said yourself, they want to be part of a tribe. And it's a Jewish tribe. Now, it's true, my students say to me all the time, I want my brand of Judaism. There's a challenge, I feel, in that. But nevertheless, they're not satisfied with fading away.
Mm-hmm. But also, I don't think we should overstate this. As many people as are here, 2,500 people, it's not like a mass movement. You're not seeing a lot of people here. How many, and we're a train ride away from London, how many even British Jews are here?
Right.
So, and I know that they've Limmud all over. There's Limmud now in Jerusalem and in Australia, and Limmud's in Boca.
Yishai told me there's a whole Limmud for the former Soviet Union that's done in Russia,
yes,
all over the world.
Yes, he did that, right. And he was over in Northern California doing that a couple weeks ago. But still, as a percentage of the Jewish people, how many are participating in Limmud?
Okay, fair.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a cool thing to be a part of, and I think you and I are maybe a little different than a lot of people because we are, the two of us, very curious people.
Yes.
And I'm constantly expanding my comfort zone. I talk about this incessantly, as I have a feeling you are too, and grappling with some questions, both personal and existential and national, and because we are blessed to live in a Jewish country. So we, to some degree, can flex ourselves on some other issues that perhaps we didn't have the luxury of doing in the past. We, as a big we, not as an individual we. The collective we didn't have to. Because, look, ironically, our children are keeping us safe, right? Mm-hmm. Our kids are going to the army. They're creating the safe space for us to be divisive, have tremendous arguments, and do everything else that Israel is so famous for, argue all the time. But that's something that, again, I focus that back to the 67 war, because up till 67, Israel was not a safe place.
Oh, for
Very
sure not.
small, thin country, and not at all sure that it was going to continue to grow.
And the poor stepchild of world Jewry. I mean,
Yeah,
there's really
totally.
a sense
And no friends.
No.
So
the French, oddly enough.
The expanding of our borders wasn't just about expanding our borders, which engendered all the arguing that we have today, occupation liberation, and the kind of stuff that I unfortunately have to be a part of. But it allowed us to breathe a little bit, and when you can breathe, you can start exploring other issues.
So let's talk about that, because as I mentioned, there's one group of Jews that is glaringly absent from this amazing sort of rainbow, if I can take back a term, of Jewish life.
Right.
And that's the Orthodox. Now, and when I say Orthodox, there are people here, myself, yourself, who define ourselves as nem on the Torah mitzvot, right? Like really faithful to our perception that God gave us the Torah.
Right.
It's the plan and the mission, and that our obligation is to live it in our lives. But there's a cultural group called the Orthodox, especially the ultra-Orthodox, who have a very strong presence in Britain, who are not only not here, but don't believe this should be happening.
Yeah, they're against this happening. It's not like they're ignoring it. I mean, I had people say to me I shouldn't be going.
What do you mean?
I had people like
in Israel, you mean?
In Israel, who said to me, "You should not be going because there are ideas and there are things there that have opened the door to the kinds of Judaism that are eroding traditional Judaism, and if you go, you're a part of that."
Like my father used to say, "It's good to be open-minded, but don't be so open-minded that your brains fall out."
Right.
What do you think?
Look, my personal perspective is that I like to engage people, not just because I want them to hear what I have to say, because I want to hear what they have to say. I'm constantly going over my beliefs, and if somebody can come and change my mind about something, that's great. Right. And you can't do that if you're not part of the game. If you're not out there, then you don't have a chance to do that. When you're sitting alone in front of your computer and reading an article, it's not the same thing as going to a lecture, be able to ask a question, start chatting with the person at one of the meals or sitting next to you after the lecture and saying, well, what did you think about that? Or going up to the lecture themselves afterwards, which I've done here, and giving a couple of thoughts on what they said and, from my perspective. And that's how you enrich it. So I definitely believe in getting in there, but you have to be very secure in order to do that. And I think a lot of people aren't secure enough to be able to do that. To say that I can wade into this pond even when it's sometimes murky and come out clean. And I don't know if I can.
Right.
Maybe I'm thinking a little too high here. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting, that sense of security, insecurity, because as I keep mentioning, at the point I'm at in my linear approach to history, we're right at the edge of the Enlightenment. And I feel like there's a reactionary stance that the Orthodox, the very word Orthodox didn't come into being amongst Jews until basically 1805 was Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, who was an insult, of the Enlighteners that started calling the religious Jews Orthodox, because Orthodox means, of course, there's a set of unquestioned principles at the core of your beliefs, whereas the Maskilim, the Jewish Enlighteners, were into questioning everything. Right. And Rav Hirsch actually took it upon himself as a compliment. He said, absolutely, you know what? You're right. We are Orthodox. And on one hand, I find that very beautiful and true. On the other hand, it's a reactionary posture. We're kind of set. Insecurity, I think, is a kind word. I mean, it's like there's a deeply reactionary posture in the sense that these ideas are dangerous. Those people are dangerous. You can't mingle with them. You might get infected, as if liberalism were an infectious disease, which sometimes it appears that it is. Yeah, but that ought to pose some questions. Right. And as we were speaking before we got started, I have a sense, as you said, that we're at a special age. Beautiful, the image.
Tipping point, if you will.
Yeah, but a beautiful image that you gave that I really had never thought about before, that our children are keeping us safe. And creating this space within which we can actually begin not just to breathe and disagree, but to ask the deeper questions about how do we move the mission forward. And, I think in my mind that Ezra, the scribe, after the great destruction of the first temple and the return from Babylon, took it upon himself to say, how do we move this mission forward? I have the Torah from God. What does God want from me now? What does it look like now? Or Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, in the wake of the destruction of the second temple, asking basically the same question. How do we move this mission forward? Are we at that point today as a people where, unlike back in the 19th century in Europe, where, the reform movement, let's throw away the old, we'll keep the good that we want, but they weren't in a national home in order to do it. Is there some sort
Do you not throw away the baby with the bathwater, as it were? Yeah.
But not only that, is there a different type of change that's available when you actually have a geographical and cultural center, which is not possible in the exile?
Well, look, this is something that we grapple with in Israel, because so many, like my kids too, will say, I don't have to keep all the halachot. I don't have to keep all the mitzvot. My day-to-day life is Jewish.
Right.
So while we were kind of ghettoizing ourselves for a long time and creating a Jewish space within a different environment, sometimes hostile, a little more hostile, sometimes a little less. Now in Israel, you know when all the holidays are because it's around. So
although, as Yishay loves to point out, unfortunately, it's not as true as we would like it to be. But it is certainly more so than it was when I was growing up.
It's definitely different. Shabbat is still the day off of the week. You may not keep a traditional Shabbat, but I can tell you that a good number, if not the vast majority of Israeli Jews have Friday night dinner.
Yes.
Okay, it may not be with Kiddush and it may not be with Chalot and the traditional Shabbat dinner, but it's family night.
Yes.
Which really is at the core of what Judaism is family.
And, in the Hebrew language, as our listeners should know, you say Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, you say the first day, the second day, the third day. You don't say the seventh day.
No.
You just say Shabbat.
You just say Shabbat.
Everybody knows it's Shabbat.
And Friday afternoon, all over Israel, not having anything to do with what they're going to be doing on Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, or if you turn on the news Saturday night, right after Shabbat's over, Shavua Tov, have a good week. Yep. It's just part of the culture. So we're living a cultural Judaism, and how does that replace traditional/religious Judaism? Does it replace it? Do you have to choose? Can you, we try and bring both to our lives.
Sure.
But some people are making a choice of one or the other. So you have, call it in English. Is this too loud?
I don't know. We're getting invaded. That's fine. We're going to wrap it up in a minute.
Okay.
But finish your thought. I have one more I want to share with you.
Okay, because in English, so it's Orthodox Judaism, but in Hebrew, it's Charedim, which altogether means the fearful ones.
Yeah, that tremble before God.
That tremble before God. So that gives you another whole look as to perhaps their mindset. But to come back to the question, why aren't they here? Is this too much of a questioning place? Or it's not even that I don't think they're afraid of the questions. I wouldn't want to say that. I think that this is would for a lot of them just be a waste of time. This isn't Judaism.
Well, yeah, and that last piece is the piece that's most painful to me. Is that there's a tribalism that exists within us as a people.
Yeah, sub-tribalism.
Yeah, well, one people, one land, 12 tribes.
Yes, we've forgotten that.
Well, it's actually a very important thing I often emphasize in my teaching is that there's a positive value to tribalism as life is presented in the Torah.
Right.
And that's because there are many ways to be in the world. And there's many ways to be a Jew. There's many ways to be part of one people. But there takes a base level commitment that the way I am defines me as a Jew and the way you are defines you as a Jew, but they don't have to be the same. What defines us is the mission. I want to close with one thought since we've actually just been invaded. We thought this was a quiet space.
Everyone saw us here, and they had to come. That's it. We just attracted everybody.
Picture it, people. 2,500 Jews all packed into a very small hotel room. No, just kidding. I've been telling the story of Chassidut, of the rise of Chassidut, for the last couple of episodes. And it's very important to me that the Baal Shem Tov's vision, which the regular listeners heard about a couple of episodes ago, when he had an aliyah neshama, he had a soul elevation, and he met the Messiah. He writes this down in a letter that he sent to one of his students in the land of Israel, and he says that the Messiah told him many things, but they told him, ultimately the Baal Shem Tov said to him, when will you come? That's our question. Like, when? Let it be soon. Let it be now. It's been so long. There's been so much suffering, and especially in the 19th century in Europe, or he was in the 18th century, it was a hard life. Sure,
only to be surpassed by the 20th century.
Well, little did they know it was coming, right?
Right.
And the Messiah said to him, when your streams will spread outward, meaning the whole momentum of Jewish life up until the Baal Shem Tov had been, keep the walls high. Keep things separate. We must be other. And the Messiah said to the Baal Shem Tov, it's only going to work when you influence the whole world. And I just want to say that the noise you hear behind us is people who are here to influence and be influenced, to share and to really spread their waters outward. So I want to give you a blessing that you have the ability to touch not only the people that you speak to, but the people who speak to the people you speak to. And you should know that the work that we're doing here is holy work, and that everybody listening now should take to heart the fact that we are people with a mission, and that the time has come to get on task. And that if Limmud is a place for you, I can tell you it is an energy like none other, and you have an opportunity to touch hearts and minds in a way in which is just not always available. So, Eve, thanks so much for joining us.
This was great,
It was
Mike.
a great opportunity.
Let's do it again. Maybe in Jerusalem next time.
Maybe next time in Jerusalem. We should keep that line. That's a good line.
The Shana B'Av Yerushalayim.
So I just want to thank a few people. I want to thank all the people who give their hard-earned money for making this show happen. I'm inviting you to join them right now. You can go to my ravmike.com page. It's up, people. Go there and you can hit the donate button and just follow the directions. I want to thank the Land of Israel Network before I get swallowed up by the noise. I want to thank the Pardes Institute for both sending me here and giving me a platform to teach so many wonderful Jews. And I want to thank you for listening. I'm Rav Mike Feuer, and this is The Jewish Story.